Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me today. In this short clip, I wanted to talk a little about how I paint black glossy hair with oil paints, and how I avoid it looking grey, which is a common problem many artists face. So firstly, like everything else, I start with a block-in, which just puts down the basic colours and shapes. I'll begin with a really dark tone comprised of burnt umber, ultramarine blue and ivory black, and I've also added a small amount of liquid original to make the paint flow a little bit easier. I don't put this in everywhere, but just in the areas that are darkest. A fairly important point to note is that I have made the forehead slightly larger than it actually is, and this way I can later bring the hairline back down over the top, and it should show some of the skin tones underneath. I'm also working on the hair while the skin tones on the forehead are still wet, and this way I can avoid a hard line separating the skin from the hair, which would make it look quite unnatural. Instead, the colours are blending slightly, which lightens the hair at the hairline. Once the dark colours are in, I put in a few of the lighter shades. I mix a lighter colour which consists of burnt umber, ultramarine blue, titanium white and a touch of a quinacridone magenta, to just take it away slightly from a grey colour. Colour accuracy is not so important in the block-in here, and I was more just trying to establish the lighter and darker areas. So after the block-in is completely dry, I can start refining some of the shapes and colours. I often find it takes a few layers to really get that deep tone in the darker areas, so I'll lay it in again with the same dark mixture as before. Once that's in, I can move to putting in a few of the lighter areas, so more or less the same process so far. However, for this layer, I have been using a smaller brush, and this will allow me to have more control and I'll be able to put in a bit more detail. I begin with the highlights at the front, and this time I'm more conscious of the shape of these lighter areas. I'm using a small flathead brush and I'm matching my brush stroke to the direction that the hairs are going in, making sure to leave some gaps between for some darker areas. These lighter areas are nowhere near the lightest part, so I've used more of a mid-tone for this area, which also is the same mixture used in the block-in. The brightest part of the hair is the top of the head, which reflects almost like a bright white, and this is a key attribute to glossy hair. So I mix more white in the lighter colour and apply this with short broken marks. I don't want this colour to blend too much with the darker tone, as it would mix to a dull grey, so I don't really work the surface that much. There is a nice orange reflective light coming from the right hand side, and this is casting a red-orange glow. I use a mixture of cadmium yellow pale and vermilion red to sparingly apply this along the outside and a bit in the middle. I'll increase the vibrancy of all these colours in the next layers. I noticed that I had created a bit of a hard line between the forehead and the hairline, so I took some of the skin tones I had been using and brushed up in a few areas to break up that line. Moving on to the third layer, the first thing I do is push a few more skin tones back into the hairline. And then I want to deepen the dark colours yet again, so I mix the same dark shade of ultramarine blue, burnt umber and ivory black, but I also add a touch of quinacridone magenta to this mix. So again, I just apply this in the darkest areas, beginning at the front and bringing these hairs back over the skin tones. I'm being very careful here as I don't want to cover the whole area. I felt that the black hairs were a little too strong, so I take the skin tone and work back to lighten some of those black hairs. To get even more control, I switch to using a rigger brush and use very thin paint to put in some of the really fine hairs, and work back and forth with the dark colours and skin tone until I get the look I'm after. Working on the lighter area, I use a dry brushing technique with an old bristle dagger brush, and use limited paint to scrape in some lighter colours. This technique is leaving very fine broken lines, which is perfect for hair texture. I darken the rest of the areas and also intensify the lighter highlights and orange glow by just layering over with stronger colours. For the fourth layer, I follow the same process. I mix the colour again, but this time I use quite a bit of liquid to make a glaze, and not only is this going to darken the colours even further, but it will also leave a fairly glossy finish when it dries, and this is an attribute of Liquid Original. So I work this over all the darker areas again, and then move on to the lighter areas. I want to make it look a little less grey, so I mix a colour which comprises of the same colours which were Burnt Umber, Ultramarine Blue, Titanium White and Quinacridone Magenta, but I alter the ratio slightly and use more of the magenta and blue colours, which will shift the colour to a more purple hue. Using this, I go over the lighter area at the front and work back and forth between this colour and the dark colour until it looks right. Moving on to the really bright area at the back, I layer over it with a colour very close to pure white, and again I try to make these marks with one stroke, as I don't want it to blend to grey. I thought it was a little too strong, so I used a dark colour to work back and break up some of those lighter marks. I also really intensify that orange colour along the back. Lastly, to really add the detail to this, I use a rigger brush and thin paint to draw in some of the loose hairs. You don't have to paint the whole hair strand, but just small sections of it that are really catching the light. And I use the varying colours that I've already used to add variety. So with that, I'm going to call it done. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please give it a like and let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and also subscribe if you would like to see more painting tutorials. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.